This may sound a bit cliche to you, so follow me for a minute here. Way back in the day, car manufacturers, mainly American car manufacturers, would make one car, but offer it many different bodies, like a coupe, a convertible, a station wagon, and a sedan. Fast forward to today, and it's mainly German car manufacturers that make one car, but they only offer it in one body, and it kind of looks like this. The only thing that has stayed consistent between yesterday and today, both the Americans and now the Germans make them with high horsepower versions. Although the Germans, they kind of tweak it a bit and they have the same car, but it's made from a different country, which we've already driven, or they have it from different regions within Germany. So if the world's going to change like that, why don't you and I drive the fastest one from Ingolstadt? So you and I have driven a number of derivations of a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8 in Bentleys, Porsches, and now 3 Audis. This one, 591 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque that comes in at 2,200 RPM, stays flat all up to 4,500 RPM. Now this being an Audi, yes, it is all-wheel drive. It also means something about the transmission. So some Audis do have dual clutch transmissions. However, Audis with significant amounts of torque like that, they make do with a Tiptronic transmission. I don't know it's a term from the Porsche world, but what that means here is a torque converter. We will talk more about that later. And then there is the reality that this thing is an SUV, so there's some practical applications, even though there is 591 horsepower, like towing, 7,700 pounds. Fuel economy, do we really need to discuss it? 13, 19, 15 combined. 0 to 60, very respectable, 3.7 seconds to 60. And VMAX, 155 miles an hour. This may be one of those newfangled coupe SUV things, but it's not exactly a lightweight. 5,490 pounds, or depending how you express your weights and measures, 2,490 kilograms. Two rather important points about that. Number one, it's about 400 pounds more than a box standard Q8. And number two, far more important, over 500 pounds more than that stunning RS6 Avant. With this exact same engine, we drove on this very road with that. Okay, does that wake up? Wow, does that sound magnificent? Now, technically, there is a little bit of a delay from your right foot to actual acceleration, but once this thing gets into 3,000 and 4,000 RPM, it is explosive power. The kind of experience we had in that RS6, it's just not as immediate as it was in the RS6, and I'm guessing it's a combination of the increased coefficient of drag and the extra weight. I am somewhat surprised how well Audi has paired this 8-speed transmission with both the RS Q8 as well as the RS6 Avant. It works incredibly well when you consider it's not something like a lightning fast PDK or has those kind of shifts. It's more of a fluid, silky smooth shift, not quite as mechanical. You don't really want to change the gears yourself, but God, once you let the computer change the cogs, it works incredibly well. Better than one would expect in a torque converter equipped automatic. There is one hint device I would say here. When one pushes it incredibly aggressive and it does downshift to get you out of, say, a tight turn like this, it might, oh, that was wonderful and sideways. It might leave you a little flat-footed. Aside from the bonkers engine, what makes an RS Q8 an RS Q8? Apparently a lot. Let's start with the underpinnings. There they start with a box standard Q8 and they change the suspension to what's called an RS tuned air ride. It's not like one can't have air ride on other Q8s. We've driven it in SQ8. Here the tuning is changed and a number of components have been layered onto it to impact the driving dynamics. Like for example, there is a sport differential in the rear that can adjust the torque from side to side, and that in turn works in conjunction with how they split the torque from front to rear. And this is more of a mechanical, old school way of doing things rather than the sport differential they have in the back. The sport differential is a combination of an old school mechanical diff and some computer wizardry with a torque split front to rear. That's more 40 in the front, 60 in the back, but the system can send up to 70% of the torque to the front when needed, or up to 85% of the torque to the rear. And that brings us to the two items that I feel have the biggest impact on the driving dynamics of an RSQ8. First would be the four-wheel steering. Yes, it transforms the handling of the vehicle. And yes, it goes way beyond the concept of, oh, it shortens the wheelbase of a large vehicle. It is one of the items that enables us to do what you're seeing on camera today. Then the item that is probably more important than the four-wheel steering and even the power coming out of the engine is the active roll stabilization system. Now this is a 48-volt suspension system. No, the car is not 48-volt, just the suspension system. And what this system does is counteract the lean of the vehicle. So think of an anti-roll bar. Here it's made up of two parts that are connected to an electric motor that controls the anti-roll bar. When the car is going straight down the road, the two halves are not connected. They are decoupled, so this way it doesn't disturb the ride quality of the vehicle. But when pushing it aggressively in turns like you and I are doing today, each half goes in opposite directions to counteract the lean and mitigate the weight moving around, which is incredibly important in a vehicle that weighs, what, 5,500 pounds and has a high center of gravity. Now all of that is fine and good, but something incredibly important to bring these disparate systems together, and it's usually something we experience on Porsche Cayennes, fast ones at that, and that is a torque vectoring system. So it could bring together or bridge the gap between the sport differential in the back, the stability control system, the air ride. Now something else to mitigate the size and weight of an RSQ8 would absolutely be the brakes. Up front, 16.5-inch diameter rotors fitted as standard. In the back, 14.6. As a basis of comparison, a box standard Q8, it would be 14.8 in the front and 13.8 in the rear. However, this isn't a box standard RSQ8. It is fitted with the carbon ceramic rotors up front. And the numbers are kind of comical. Up front, 17.3-inch diameter rotors. As a basis of comparison, a large pizza in the city of New York is 18 inches. Then, of course, there are the wheels. Fitted as standard are 22s, but what you are looking at are not 22s. They are 23s. They call them the V5 spokes. And they get to such granularity where one can pick the color to contrast the color of the vehicle. While we're at it, one can pick the color of the caliper to contrast the color of the vehicle. And that brings us to yet another point of what makes an RSQ8 an RSQ8. Answer being aesthetics. Now this is made up of a number of factors. The things you notice the most, the grille and the air dam in the front, the bumper and the diffuser in the rear, and the spoiler. And then of course we can't forget the interior, and there it's all subtle changes to color and trim. Like for example, a better grade of leather throughout the interior. The stitching changes in two ways. It's contrasting stitching, which I love, as well as a change in the pattern. It's more of like a diamond stitch pattern, but not quite a Bentley way of doing it, more a Germanic way of doing it. The rest of the interior pretty much looks like a Q8, which was already a good place to be. You and I have driven most of the Audi performance SUVs, but this one is a completely different kettle of fish in terms of driving dynamics. It is to a level in terms of adhesion and limits that the others can't really come close to, and that's a function of some of the stuff we just discussed. But really what's going on here, and I can't believe I'm saying this, there is virtually no pitch in a vehicle that has a high center of gravity and weighs almost 5,500 pounds. But it doesn't mean all is right in Camelot. And to demonstrate that, you gotta go full tap on the accelerator, and there you get a significant amount of squat. It's pronounced. It's more than other vehicles in this space. I would argue it's more than the Cayenne, which this shares some heritage with. On the flip side, dive, even under hard braking, is pretty well controlled considering the size and weight of the vehicle. Then there are the differing drive modes, and this has the biggest impact on ride quality. Like for example, in comfort mode, it drives kind of like a luxury SUV, perhaps a bit more harsh ride than an RS, which we're in right now. It does change the overall ride quality, but not something to the point where your wife, grandmother, other girlfriend will be like, oh, that's a horrible choice, honey. And that brings us to beyond the fun and games, where I have to give you one of my standard PSAs, and that is, in the right hands, this is a magnificent tool for roads like these or a track day. However, in the wrong, untrained hands, this it's a weapon. It will kill you. This is the type of vehicle where one absolutely needs proper driver training, I would say proper car control training, and then you can have an incredibly good day at the office. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game on the options game with today's contestant. The second time you and I are experiencing the 591 horsepower twin turbocharged Audi V8, but this time in a slightly taller carrying case, the 2021 Audi RS Q8 for a base price of $113,000. To that, we add the color. It is absolutely stunning and called Navarro Blue or Navarra Blue. And shockingly, it is not like a Mercedes that it costs $4,000. It is a paltry $595. However, it is not all puppy dogs and roses. The interior is black. I am told that is not the only choice, thank you very much. One can pick different colors through Audi Individual, I am told as well. However, why would one pick black with this stunning blue exterior? I would even suggest, this is gonna sound a little New York Goomba, yeah, how about a red interior? Not all red, just the seats, like a darker red, but the rest of the interior is black with red insets in the doors. Yeah, it would look a little Ferrari-esque, but very cool. Then we press on to a rather important option, the carbon ceramic rotors with the red calipers. This isn't just buying more powerful brakes, which I do suggest in both this and the RS6 Avant. This is also buying a tune to the engine, which changes the VMAX. It goes from the 155 we talked about earlier to 190 miles an hour. Now, even a cheapskate like me, I would probably do that. Then we press on to the carbon Optic package. And this transforms the visuals of the car. The mirror fairings, the diffuser on the bumper, and most importantly, the single frame around the grille, carbon fiber. I usually do not like carbon fiber, but in this case, yeah, even a cheapskate like me, again, would spend this time half the cost of the brakes, $4,500. Then the black Optic package. This one's pretty important. Usually I don't like the black trim, but this isn't just the black Optic trim. This is the Sport exhaust, which sounds magnificent on this car, and the 23-inch 5 Y-spoke wheels, $2,950. Then a luxury package. This I really didn't expect, but it's kind of nice. It's massage seats, it's the sunshades in the rear doors, and the extended leather and the Alcantara headliner, $2,800. Then the executive package. This is a little bit strange. Dual pane acoustic glass, the head-up display, gotta have that. The heated rear seats, the power soft closed doors, that is $2,000. Now I do need to point out, this car you get a $350 credit because it doesn't have rear airbags. Something tells me the rear airbags, at least the parts for it, are most likely the chip, because we're dealing with a chip shortage that's slowing car production down. The chip for that system probably wasn't in the factory, so they're giving you a $350 discount. Then we press on to the driver's assistance package. That is the assist for the adaptive cruise control, $1,750. No, it is not a self-driving car, but it will assist in driving in traffic. Then the tow package, $750. And then last but not least, the destination and handling from Bratislava, Slovakia. The engine is made in Germany, $995 for a total retail price of $137,990. Three important notes you and I have yet to cover. First would be the steering. It's good, it's direct, but like the RS6, it is just too light. It needs a little bit more weight into it, especially considering the purpose of this vehicle. Second would be the brakes. Here, magnificent pedal modulation and wonderful stopping power. Something that is hard to do with a vehicle of this size and this center of gravity. And somewhat related to that, the driver's seat. And I know you and I have discussed in previous episodes the concept of the ski boot as it relates to performance cars. And that is, you go up on the mountain, you need proper fitting ski boots and you will have a good day on the slopes. If you do not have proper fitting ski boots, it will be a very bad day. Same thing here. And this seat, it is just too big. It's made for larger people that are wider. And you notice this more in the higher center of gravity RS Q8 than you do in the wagon. You feel disturbed more. I feel like I'm being flip-flopped between the seat too much. Now, last I checked, this isn't a vehicle where price sensitivity is an issue. So can we have a seat that has some adjustments to the bolsters, or perhaps a racing seat, and not made for people that are Sasquatch? If you couldn't tell from our rather spirited drive today, this unusually good, way better than I expected it to be, and it challenges one to think differently with a 5,500 pound vehicle that has a high center of gravity and almost 600 horsepower. That leads us to the question of, okay, how does it compare against the Cayenne? And there are two notes. First would be, at least against the Cayenne GTS or a Cayenne Turbo, those are a bit sharper dynamically. The second note would be aesthetics, and I'm saying, please, do not tell Zuffenhausen I said this, but to my eye, I find this one more pleasing, specifically the rear three-quarter. And that, of course, in turn leads us to the wish list. And yeah, we talked about the seats earlier, and an additional note about the seats, this is a performance vehicle, so you really need adjustable thigh support there as well. For someone like my height, it's too short. Maybe even think of racing seats. Aside from that, there's nothing else I would add to the wish list for this Audi specifically. It's that good. However, I do need to add something to a global wish list for Audi, and that is the UX design. As you know, this is a huge thing for me, and I'm seeing the direction going of these two screens and everything they do. It's pretty to look at. It's great for an iPad. It's great for your computer at home. But for a 5,500 pound vehicle, driving it down the road, we do need some tactile feedback, and haptic feedback does not work. We need like knobs, toggle switches, buttons. If you want like a mix and match of the screen and like a knob, kind of like Mazda or BMW do, maybe we do that. But this all screen thing, can we please try something different? And that's really all I have to add to the wish list. I know it's a huge ask, but it's something that I think could happen inside of an Audi pretty easily because they already have some hard buttons and some controls on the steering wheel. And this is where I turn this around to you guys, and you opine in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, the obvious question, yes, I still would rather have the RS6 Avant. And no, not just because it's cheaper, but because it is an RS6 Avant. Not that there's anything wrong with this. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.